You are watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada. I am Jon Elmer. This is the Resistance Report for day 636 of Israel's genocidal war. We'll begin with the maps, as we always do, to ground us on this. We are going to be focusing today on the battle in Khan Younis. This is the second battle in Khan Younis. The first battle of Khan Younis went from December 2023 until the end of Ramadan, early April 2024. And this is the first time beginning in late May, but particularly in the first few weeks of June, that the Israeli military has operated in Khan Younis. We're showing you this map right now on the screen that I've been using for the last few months because it shows the free fire zones that the Israeli military is operating under. And when you look at those maps, you can see that there's just 3 small places in Gaza that people are being pushed to. This is a pressure tactic. The Jerusalem Post had some Israeli military sources speaking to it the other day, and they said the plans are discussed to evacuate Gazawis from key areas. They noted, this is the military, they noted that Hamas is in Hamas's current state, a mass evacuation could turn public sentiment against Hamas. So there's this ethnic cleansing in order to pressure a government to achieve an objective that their military has failed over 20 months of genocide to achieve. The goal of Israel's war, very clear: return the captives through violence. Failed. Destroy the Qassam brigades. You're going to see for about half an hour today that is very much not been accomplished. Destroy the government. The Hamas government is willing to step down. The organization of the Palestinian state has not been collapsed on a municipal level. What gets destroyed gets rebuilt. And so they failed on that count. And the other objective was that Gaza would no longer be a threat to Israel. And after 20 months of genocide, certainly Gaza will remain a threat to Israel because you have half of the population of the Gaza Strip are children watching the worst things in the world that we've ever seen happening right in front of their eyes to their families. And they know that fighting and resisting to stay in their homeland is the only choice that Israel has given them. Israel's been carrying out an average of 150 airstrikes a day over Gaza over these past weeks, as Nora reported in her news report. If you didn't check that out, please do. She does a great job every week on that. And they're killing 100 plus people a day, 150 on Tuesday. And on Tuesday, the day they killed 150 in Gaza, the Israeli military field reports talked about less than 10, they call them terrorists, killed in Gaza. So even by the Israeli military accounts, which are wildly inflated, they're talking about less than 10 fighters killed for 150 people killed in Gaza. This is a war on civilians. We've been saying that from the very beginning. If we look at the next map, this was a rare map. I've been showing you this for the last few weeks because this is one of the rare maps from the Israeli military that's actually somewhat accurate. And you can see in this map here that the bottom on the far left, that's Rafah, which has been completely ethnically cleansed, every building in it destroyed, and Israel is setting up its allows Yasser Abu Shabab, the collaborator gang squad, to operate in that area. You see Division 36 there pressing up on Khan Younis just above Rafah, and you see Division 98 pushing down on Khan Younis from the north. Division 98 is the commando division. They're the division that ran around sacking hospitals. They're responsible for sacking Shifa twice. They were responsible for sacking Nasser Hospital, and they were pulled out to go during the 12-day war with Iran. The 98th Division was pulled out. They have been returned to Gaza to the north. So Israel appears to be moving its center of gravity to the north to press on Gaza City again. Reports this morning are the 98th Division are going into Shujaiya, east of Gaza City, for now the 4th time in this war. We can take a look at, I want to show you these maps and tell you what the Israeli military is doing, because this is how you track victory and defeat, failure and success. And we've done this throughout the war, and it's failure time and time again. You'll remember when we covered the general's plan, which was supposed to be the ethnic cleansing of all of northern Gaza, which was at the end of 2024. And that operation ended with scores of Israeli soldiers killed, and them essentially accepting the ceasefire deal under threat of attack from the resistance. And that is continuing to this day. On this next map, I'll show you where we're looking in Khan Younis. So you can see from the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs map that all of Khan Younis is now a free fire zone. That what you see along the coast is Mawasi. That is where people have been pushed into the so-called safe zone. Now the Israeli military calls it the safer zone because they constantly bomb the tents that are in that area along the sand dunes along the coast in Al-Mawasi. And the next map is an older map from the United Nations where you can see the way that Khan Younis is breaking down. You can see up in the north Al-Qarara, there is a battalion of the Khan Younis brigade in Al-Qarara. They have been fighting fierce battles for the last month. And there's 6 battalions in Khan Younis, plus a Special Forces Nukba battalion is also in Khan Younis. And you have to assume that there's a significant number of fighters from Rafah who have moved up to Khan Younis, given the circumstances in Rafah. There will still be the Rafah brigade in Rafah, but you can imagine them moving their forces by tunnel up into this battle in Khan Younis, because the battle in Rafah has resulted in the complete ethnic cleansing of Rafah. And that is the goal for Khan Younis. And you can see down at the bottom of that map, Abasan al-Kabira. That is where, right near the wall, the fence into the ghetto of Gaza, you can see the fence running along the right side of that map. Fierce fighting there, which means that the Israeli military is unable to move past the first battalion of the Qassam Brigade's Khan Younis brigade, and are still fighting in Abasan al-Kabira. We'll see lots of operations from there. Also, you see the refugee camp and the hospital. Nasser Hospital is in the refugee camp there. And the goal for the IDF, they say repeatedly, is to do to Khan Younis what they did to Rafah. But you're going to see in these videos today that they're not doing that. They're getting met with very significant resistance. This first is there one? Yeah, give me the 2 evacuation maps. I always show you these 2. These are criminal maps. There's been more than 50 of these released. This is the evacuation of Khan Younis. And the next map is the evacuation of downtown Khan Younis, pushing people into Al-Mawasi area. I show you these maps because we want people to understand how Israel has been carrying out this ethnic cleansing. They believe that there's plausible that there's legal plausibility if they warn people ahead of time before they massacre them and commit this ethnic cleansing. That is, of course, not true at all. And what these maps are maps that will be used in the war crimes trials coming up against Israeli soldiers should justice prevail in this conflict. Let's look at number 7 here. This is the first operation. You can see fighters here moving through the tunnel. This is carried out by the same unit. You see multiple Shawad in this tunnel. You see Yasin 105. You're going to see a Tandem 85 as these fighters move these weapons out to the side of a supply line, again in Abasan al-Kabira on the eastern edge of Gaza. These fighters, a squad of 6 that we saw use the tunnel, is accessing this supply route through the tunnel and planting these Shawad EFPs, explosively formed penetrators. This is the most devastating weapon that the Qassam brigades have in their arsenal, built by hand. You can see the 2 Shawads on this footage. This is the commander watching on a car backup camera, and you can see the 2 Shawads there. You can see it very clearly there, and the tank drives past it and blurs it. And this is the commander commanding the operation from underground on the same closed lines that we have been talking about for 20 months that have been upholding the foundation of the resistance, communications, and control, which has allowed the resistance to fight despite assassinations of their top leaders. They're able to fight. And this picture that you're looking at right now is a still. You can see the fighters moving through the tunnel, holding the 𝐄𝐲𝐻 with you. The next one, you can see the commander on the closed line, and he says we need to hit them both at the same time so that neither of the 𝐓𝐻𝐿 troop carriers get away. We'll need 𝐄𝐲𝐻 explosive devices for the first APC in this area. 2 charges will be set. We saw them set those 2 charges, and as soon as the 𝐄𝐲𝐻 go off, immediately fire the Yasin 105s to target the second APC. The goal is to trap the 2 APCs that the resistance has been watching travel down this supply route. So that is the first half of the operation. Let's take a look at the second half of the operation here. This is the detonation. So you can see the 2 devices there on the top right. We watch them be planted, and they're going to be detonated simultaneously against this 𝐓𝐻𝐿 troop carrier. And you just see it go off right there, destroys the camera. Again, they're using backup cameras. We've seen this all through the war. Now, this is a fighter's head cam. This is his GoPro on his head watching the same tank be hit from a second angle. And you can see that the tunnel has gotten them up into this shrubbery that they're using as concealment for the operation. So that's the first 𝐓𝐻𝐿 getting hit simultaneously with the 2 𝐄𝐲𝐻s. The fighters immediately move into position. Here's an archer with a Yasin 105. He spots the second 𝐓𝐻𝐿, just like the commander said would happen. And he launches this first Yasin 105. You're going to watch the same archer go over, pick up the tandem 85 here, and move out and fire again on the 𝐓𝐻𝐿, which you can see at this point is no longer moving. The first shape charge from the Yasin 105, it creates a dart, and the dart goes through the armor and into the cabin, and it rattles around in the cabin. We've talked about this a few times over the 20 months. The vehicle doesn't explode. It gets pierced. The armor gets pierced. And when the fighters see that, and the Israelis admitted that there was 2 injured in here, the fighters immediately descend on the vehicle. We're watching the fighters right up beside there. They're firing on portholes that could be shot from inside the tank. And here a fighter is literally going to try to open the back door of this 𝐓𝐻𝐿 troop carrier and enter the vehicle. Now, an interesting point came out a couple days later from Army radio that said, now it can be told inside of one of the vehicles, the second vehicle in this encounter, was the senior division commander of the IDF Southern Command. It was the chief of the 36th Division that is overseeing this battle in Khan Younis. The Qassam fighters almost captured the commander of the 36th Division that is in charge of this operation. A remarkable operation that I'll show you here in some still pictures that just capture everything that we need to see about this. The stills here are, you're looking right from the view of the archer here. You can see his Yasin 105, and at this point you can see with the dust that the 𝐓𝐻𝐿, which is a tank without a turret, the 𝐓𝐻𝐿 is moving. You can see the dust. He launches this Yasin 105. It pierces through the armor and wounds 2 people inside, seriously wounded inside, causes chaos and confusion inside the tank. People are trying to figure out who got hit, and they stop, which brings the next photo here, which is when he goes back and reloads. Now you can see there's no dust beside the 𝐓𝐻𝐿. The 𝐓𝐻𝐿 is frozen. And he reloads with the tandem 85 here, which is a Qassam Brigade's invention to add a second charge onto their 85 millimeter anti-tank weapon that would not penetrate the armor of the Israeli military, the new Israeli military vehicles, the Merkava tank and the 𝐓𝐻𝐿 troop carrier, but they added a second charge onto the front, which does allow it to penetrate just a little bit less than the Yasin 105. So the tandem 85 is a version of the Yasin 105. And you can see the fighter here launches at the same 𝐓𝐻𝐿 that is now frozen in position. And inside that 𝐓𝐻𝐿, they're trying to treat the wounded. The fighters then immediately attack the Namer. In this next photo, you'll see this is what you were looking at. He's literally trying to open the door to enter the Namer. And this is not the first time that we have seen this. We saw this actually with the first Namers that entered Gaza in late October 2023. The soldiers were reporting back to their command that they felt fighters trying to get these doors open. You can see the addition there on the back of slat armor. That wasn't on there at the beginning of the war. And we saw 𝐤𝐿 use various techniques to try to get inside the tank. People may remember the operation where they put a sticky bomb and attached it right near the lock to try to blow the locking mechanism out and capture the soldiers inside, which we found out days later from Army radio was the commander of the 36th Division. To capture that, this operation is a near miss for the Israelis. It's already a spectacular operation, but to capture that commander would have been a turning point in the war for the Israelis. And that picture you're seeing right there is obviously just remarkable. The fighters able to touch the vehicle. So that was an ambush that was earlier in the month of June. I'm going to go through each of the operations that happened in Khan Younis that we have on film. And you won't have missed anything from the week that we were away from the show. So let's take a look at number 14, another remarkable operation. We're going to watch a fighter here emerge from the tunnel, touching distance from a Namer troop carrier. This is the tunnel apparatus in Khan Younis. He puts the shawaz there, you see it in front, and he pulls the detonator. He now has 5 seconds, as we've seen from the shawaz, because the detonator cord to the fuse takes 5 seconds to burn, and that gives the fighter time to flee. That was detonated. He goes down into the tunnel, and the tunnel is obscured, so the Israelis don't find the tunnel. And this second camera that you're seeing up in the corner, it says second camera. That's a second fighter emerging to track the operation. And there was a number of these close operations with tanks. It's not clear if this was the operation. There was another operation on that day that the Israelis said that the 𝐤𝐿 fighters attached a guerrilla action device onto the cabin of their Namer troop carrier. An IDF officer was killed and 10 others were wounded, which is the full crew and infantry squad in the back of the Namer troop carrier. So the Israelis believe it was a guerrilla action device. Later in the day, 𝐤𝐿 released a field report, and they said it was a shawaz. So we only see on video part of these of the total number of operations that have happened. I counted them one by one for the month of June. There was 130 qualitative operations in Khan Younis, like you're seeing right now. What you're looking at is one of 50 shawaz versus Namer troop carriers or tanks just in the month of June. So the Israeli plan to run over and destroy Khan Younis has been stopped by the resistance, and the Israelis are not achieving their military goals because of the tempo of the operation. And this is a report that the Army radio cited from its soldiers. They said in recent days, Israeli forces in Gaza have been reporting increased levels of friction with the resistance and an increase in number of clashes, exchanges of fire, and face-to-face contact in the field. So that was reported during the 12-day war with Iran, when Israel pulled out a number of battalions and one division, the 98th Division, were pulled out of Gaza to go deal with the border in Israel and the West Bank. And when that happened, the resistance increased the tempo of operations, and that was something that was noticed by the Israelis right away. This next operation is a booby trap tunnel. Again, we're seeing backup cameras. The backup cameras are very smart choice for the fighters. They have a low latency, they don't have a lag, and they're very cheap. and they would get through the siege on Gaza because they're just for cars. They're seen as just for cars. And there's the soldier you see go through. The tunnel is detonated, and that soldier was killed. That soldier was a member of Shabak. He was a Shabak operative, a Shin Bet operative, General Security Service in Israel, internal security officer. He was killed, and he's the 11th member of Shabak to be killed. There's the medevac for presumably him and his comrades that were in the building as well, although Israel has not been reporting its wounded of late. So we're seeing another medevac, and again in Abasan al-Kabira, the same neighborhood of Khan Younis. This next one is the familiar Yassin Archer versus a tank. You can see this fighter's going to move through the alleyways and get into a house to get an elevated firing position, which is an advantageous position to shoot from that we've seen all through the war. Again, mouse holing through the walls. He's going to come out here in the kitchen, stand up on the sink here, and his comrade is beside him. He's going to launch this Yassin at the back of this Merkava tank. Clearly a direct hit, as you're going to see from this video multiple times. The Israelis said one soldier was killed and one soldier was wounded in that strike. And there was a number of Yassin operations that had casualties. A couple days later, 2 more soldiers were wounded in a Yassin strike. And the Yassins versus tanks, we saw this 10 times over the last 3+ weeks or so. 28 Yassin ops altogether, if you count the attacks on the D9s and the armored personnel carriers. The D9 is what you're going to see in this next clip. This is a tandem 85 versus the D9. Again, using appropriate weapons. There's no need to use the Yassin 105 on these bulldozers because the tandem 85 does the job. And so that's why we see the fighters choosing their weapons wisely. We've pointed this out all through the war. We call it appropriate weapons. They're not just using what's lying around, they're using what is necessary. And none of these show any sign of dwindling of supplies or unavailability of supplies. This also resulted in 2 soldiers wounded. The bulldozers, as I've shown you before, have 2 people in the cockpit. They have a driver and a commander, and both were seriously wounded in this attack. This was the deadliest month. June was the deadliest month for the Israeli military in over a year of fighting, taking you back into the main days of the battle in 23 and early 2024, when they had 5 divisions in Gaza fighting all across Gaza. In this case, they're concentrated on one city and feeling and getting casualty rates that they haven't got in a year. So the Khan Younis brigade is clearly at full force here. The next one is another Shawad. We get a lot of these operations. Like I said, there's been 40 of these versus tanks alone. Again, a backup camera. They're cheap, low latency, so that there's no lag, which means that they can detonate like they just did at the exact split second that's necessary. And that's what you're seeing there. And now you're seeing it from a second angle from the spotter. And that's a pretty remarkable shot that you can see there. That's what the Shawaz looks like from a distance. And that was from the spotter. So we saw it. And then the medevac helicopters, again, telltale sign that you have multiple wounded. And you're seeing these in all of these videos. You're also seeing the fighters return to their base safely in each of these operations, something that the Israelis have been pointing out in the field reports of their own, that they attempted to encircle and find the fighters that are carrying out these operations, and they're failing. So that you see again from 2 angles versus that non-armored troop carrier. And here's from the distance, which is something we don't get to see all the time from the distance. You can see it's a devastating weapon when it's deployed. Keep that in mind, because there's a couple more Shawad operations coming up that if that's how devastating it is, you'll see in these next operations why the death toll for Israel is so high. This is a sniper operation. This has to be edited. Maybe tomorrow I can throw up my Twitter on the bottom because we had to edit this. But you can see this sniper here hitting an Israeli soldier. That's a well-known shot that played big on the internet, I think, because of the timing of it. But you can see again using what are presumed to be Israeli ammunition, which we saw the Khan Younis brigade showing off last year during the first battle of Khan Younis, that they had captured a bunch of Israeli 50 cal rounds, which are the rounds for the 𝐓𝐴𝐽 and the Qassam unit in Khan Younis was saying, here's the bullet. They showed us the markings of the IMI, Israeli Military Industries, and then they loaded it into the weapon and shot Israeli soldiers. I did a report on that back in early 2024 during the battle in Khan Younis. And in this next sniper shot, there's a couple interesting things about this sniper shot. Also had to be heavily edited, but this sniper gets two shots, gets two soldiers with one shot. There's the medevac. When it comes back around, loop it back one more time for us tomorrow, because watch how the fighter the sniper, watch him immediately tear down his setup and move. He's going to fire here, and now he's immediately tearing down his setup, and he's moving, and he's getting out of that position because he's because of counterfire. A lot of people ask, why do they not keep shooting from these sniper positions? And the reason is because the Israelis have systems that can track where the shot was from, and they'll hit that spot. So the sniper gets in position, lays there in secret all day, sometimes for multiple days, fires, and then is instantly breaking down his setup, and he's getting out of there. He's scooting, as they say, because incoming fire is potentially coming. And if you fire a second time, the ability to track becomes significantly greater. So two remarkable sniper operations of the three sniper operations that Qassam carried out in the past few weeks. Now we're going to look at a Soraya 𝐓𝐴𝐽 operation here. This is twin anti-tank guided missiles, wire-guided anti-tank missile systems. One that we have seen before, but one, the 9K-111 Bassoon, it's a Russian wire-guided anti-tank missile. Here the video is showing you that this is a command position, that the Israeli soldiers are using it. We're watching them access this building. These two buildings are going to be the target. One is a command center, one is a special forces position, and they're showing us excavators here. They're showing us that they know what they're hitting. And here it comes, a weapon we haven't seen in this entire war, the 9K-111 here being set up. We saw Hezbollah use this weapon. It's a similar class, a little bit, not quite as good as a Kornet, but similar class of weapon. And this is a Malutka. We've seen Soraya 𝐓𝐴𝐽s use this weapon throughout the war at times. It was also used on October 7th. And here the two fighters are setting up to fire simultaneously, which again helps the fighters with defensive positioning after firing, because they can fire at the same time, tear down their stuff, and get out of there before counterfire hits. And you can see, because it's wire guided, you're controlling, the fighter is controlling through the wire that coils out underneath, behind the missile. It's basically being driven right on target. And that weapon hasn't been used all war. Soraya 𝐓𝐴𝐽 said this was a joint operation with the Popular Resistance Committees. So it's possible that this is a Popular Resistance Committee weapon that they have kept the powder dry on for coming up now on 21 months of the war. Clearly a devastating weapon. Again, casualties on this operation. And this was one of more than 20 attacks against Israeli troop positions in Khan Younis. So two wire-guided anti-tank missile attacks there. Another Soraya 𝐓𝐴𝐽s operation here. This is a return to sender operation. The fighter here is writing on the mines, "Here are your goods being returned to you," as he's writing them on. These are M15 American-made, supplied to the Israelis, anti-tank. They're supposed to be anti-tank weapons, but the Israelis, as we know, have been using these for house demolitions. They wire them up all together and blow up houses with them as a more economical way of doing it. So he puts the plastic explosives in here because the Israelis take the fuse. So that is the return to sender operations rely on replacing the fuse. We see the fighters outside here, sheltered by trees, so drones can't see them, digging the hole for these. These are in a stack like this, they're a significant weapon. We've seen them take out tanks before with these stacks, and then they're totally buried as they were in this case, so completely concealed. They're going to show us from the spotter as the tank arrives to that position. You can see it there. There's the mark of a tank going into the position, and it's hit. And there's an excavator as well that we're going to see here. That's part of this unit. You can see it there. Excavator doing house demolitions. A number of excavators were targeted during this time. We don't have any on film, but there's a number in the field report. And there you can see from the spotter the detonation that the pressure plate that the 𝐓𝐴 fighters put, as soon as the heavy vehicle goes over it, it detonates, which is what we are seeing in that case. And there's another operation coming up after this one on the same video of the similar sort by 𝐓𝐴. Here they are creating, this is a second operation. They're creating a pressure plate here, writing 𝐓𝐴 on it, on the wood from the pressure plate. And essentially the pressure plate gets pressed down by something heavy and it detonates the explosive. So you can see how it's hooked up to, that's a 𝐓𝐡𝐞. It's the explosively formed penetrator. It's the 𝐓𝐴 that 𝐓𝐴 uses. And they bury it here. Also in a minefield, you can see other explosives being planted here in a minefield. Again, we're seeing them use a flattened out iron stake as the shovel. Probably a good tool to be using. I mean, it shows ingenuity to be building your own tools, but for a lot of reasons, that stake would be good for this hard ground. So there's multiple EFPs now buried in the ground, waiting for the Israeli armored vehicles. Here we see a tank. There you see a D9 armored bulldozer by Caterpillar and another D9 armored bulldozer. It's not clear which one of the three drives over it, but we're about to watch that detonate. And you can see the multiple secondary explosions there from the principal EFPs, but also from the minefield that was set. It's possible they got multiple vehicles with that operation. They showed it again for you on a loop. These are devastating weapons. The Americans, much smaller versions of these weapons, killed a lot of soldiers in American soldiers in Iraq during the Iraq War. And Qassam and 𝐓𝐴 have improved upon those weapons from that battle. Now, this is the remarkable operation that I think a lot of the audience of this show has seen already. This is the operation where two Qassam fighters, but one in particular, throws a 𝐓𝐴 inside of the open hatch of a Puma combat engineering vehicle armored personnel carrier. This is the full video. A number of these videos from Khan Younis came out because of operational security. They came out days later. But this operation was so spectacular, and it was in the news in Israel, that they released this footage in less than 24 hours. So command and control, the ability to share this media, to record it, share it, process it, and publish it, all happening in less than 24 hours. Here you see the fighters moving into position. They're concealed, and they're on this. The intelligence, reconnaissance, and surveillance behind this operation is top-notch, and that is why the mission is successful. This is not a fluke operation. You can watch this happen all throughout the day, You can see by the sunlight that this is being carried out all through the day. We're seeing Namur troop carriers, which are much more heavily armored than the Puma combat engineering vehicles. And we've seen those driving all over around here. They're not going to be the target of this operation. These fighters are using the rubble in Khan Younis, the destroyed buildings, because the goal is to attack and make it unlivable for civilians. But the fighters are using that as cover here. And now when you're looking straight ahead there, you see the berms. There you see the 𝐄𝐕𝐲 EFP right in front of him there that he's going to use. But you see those berms that are all up. Those are berms that the Israeli military built in the first Battle of Khan Younis last year. And those berms, you'll see when the fighter gets up close to it, they're overgrown at this point because the grass and weeds have grown on them in the year since. So you can see these fighters wait. Here you're going to see one fighter. He's got a guerrilla action device. He runs off. He goes to the left of the berm. He's going to attach that guerrilla action device to a Puma. And then our fighter that we're going to go along with the helmet cam, the fighter that we watched from the helmet cam, he's going to go up to this berm, use it for cover, and then he's going to come peek his head around the berm. And because they've been watching these positions, they know that these Puma troop carriers have their hatches open, which he could see from the building in that last shot. So he's got the 35 kilo 𝐄𝐕𝐲 EFP, and he's going to climb up on top of this armored vehicle and literally drop it right inside the hatch where there's at least 7 soldiers inside. The Puma carries 8 inside. He's going to throw it and drop it directly into the hole. Qassam shows us on this video multiple times, but here you can see it go right into the hole. And like I said from the previous one, he's got about 5 or 6 seconds, 5 seconds to get out of there before it goes off. And when he turns and runs back, you're going to see that the guerrilla action device also went off on the second one. Here it is coming. Here you see it. See there in the upper corner there, you can see the blast. That's from the first fighter that we saw go. And then right here, you're going to see the blast also. You see the red of the flames as he's running away here, returning to his base safely. He runs clean through this fence here, knocks off his GoPro, but he fixes it immediately to keep the shot and returns to his base safely. Both the armored personnel carriers explode in flames. This was a devastating hit. This was a hit that got to the Israelis. Both Netanyahu and Abu Ubaidah commented on this. But I'm going to read you this at length. This was the Army radio statement of this operation. It targeted the 605th Engineering Battalion in Khan Younis. The battalion fighters are fighting under the 188th Armored Brigade in Khan Younis. The fighters advanced in conquering the area in Khan Younis, carrying out attacks on Hamas targets, destroying buildings, and locating underground shafts. Yesterday at 5:30 p.m., the first report was received of a Puma armored personnel carrier engineering vehicle that caught fire. The initial investigation indicates that one fighter approached the APC and attached an explosive device to it. The explosive device exploded, causing the entire APC to catch fire. The military firefighting forces were dispatched to the scene to make efforts to extinguish the burning APC with the full crew inside. As part of one of the exercises being conducted to extinguish the fires, a D9 armored bulldozer brought sand and poured it on, but that did not work. The decision was then made on the ground. We will tow the APC back to Israeli territory and allow firefighting efforts to continue there. So Israel tows back that burning APC with all of its crew inside it burning all the way back to Israel, which would have taken some time. Army radio points. Long hours were required to identify the fallen after the identification process because the APC was just left by the Israeli military to burn for the presumably multiple hours it would have taken to tow the burning carrier all the way back to Israel. Netanyahu had to make a statement, but Abu Obaida also made a statement. He said, "Our fighters are demonstrating unique examples of heroism and daring, and the recent ambushes are a living testament to history, proving that our people's fighters are the most courageous and self-sacrificing freedom fighters in the modern era. The funerals and bodies of enemy soldiers will become a constant occurrence, God willing, as long as the occupation's aggression and its criminal war against our people continue. The enemy's government is deceiving its public and ignoring the fact that it is throwing its soldiers into the mire of Gaza for illusory political aims." And clearly, they are not winning this war, as these operations show. Just from the last 3 weeks, the most deadly month for Israeli fighters in a year. And the goal of overrunning Khan Younis is not happening because the Israeli military is stuck fighting each of the 6 battalions of the Khan Younis brigade, who have been waiting and preparing for 14 months for this second battle of Khan Younis. So that is the resistance report for this week, for day 636 of this battle.